back to the live stream coverage here at the Shannons Nationals. I'm Cameron Vanden Dungan, up in the starters rostrum ahead of race 2 for the sports sedans. 9 laps will be the journey, and this is one of those categories you want to watch. If you're new to motorsport, or if you're new to the Shannons Nationals scene, sports sedans is one of the great categories. Very fast cars. They're a big part of the state championships all around the country, and this is a great opportunity to see just how fast they can go down this main straight here. Now, as I said before, I'm in the starters rostrum. Here is our starter, and you can see just behind me, we've still got a bit of space here. I'm going to steal this in there quickly. This is how they get this one underway. I promise I won't press buttons this time. If you did follow Facebook Live last year, you'll know I caused all sorts of havoc up here. We've got boards, we've got everything ready to go. This is where we are about to get the race underway. So to take you through all the action for race 2 of the sports stands, let's join our commentators, Darren Smith and Gary O'Brien.
Thanks very much, Cameron. A fantastic place to watch the start of a race, especially the DEA Performance National Sports Sedan Championships. I'm Darren Smith, Gary O'Brien right alongside. Gaz, we had one race yesterday, 2 further races today. Stephen Tomasi sitting on pole position, won the second race here last year. He's dead set in the box seat for it this time, isn't he?
He certainly is, and I'm not going to even predict what the weather's going to do. I put my foot well and truly in it yesterday. I thought it'd be fine. It wasn't. It was wet, but boy, was it entertaining. We had 5 cars battling for the lead. Those top 5 you're seeing there were running side by side and line astern for much of that race, and ultimately Steve Tomasi on 5 cylinders won the race ahead of Simon Copping in that Commodore, which was second. Shane Woodman was third, and of course a little Nissan turbo powered Escort was fourth, and Jordan Caruso came home in 5th spot.
Certainly did, driving the John Gourlay prepared Audi A4. It's interesting, in the race yesterday, started like this, it was dry. As soon as we said go, it bucketed down. So we had a whole field of sports sedans on control Hankook slicks, really with nowhere to go. It was just a matter of survival. And then as soon as that downpour came, and it was a flooding downpour, it was gone again.
Yeah.
So by the end of the race, we started to have a drying line, but it was that ex-supercar with Simon Copping at the wheel that just ploughed his way through the field. He definitely had the car under him better than anyone else did out in the field.
A little less horsepower, a little bit more weight was just ideal for those sorts of conditions. When I say ideal, they weren't, but it was like an ice rink out there. You could imagine what we call a Great Dane or a giraffe trying to get footage in those sorts of conditions. They were slipping and sliding. It was a fantastic race. We've got dry weather. The one we should speak about, of course, is Tony Ricciardello, who was first into turn 1, slid off the road, got the car back and running again, and that's that car on the right-hand side, the Alfa Romeo body.
Unfamiliar that far back on the grid, isn't it? Just where's Tony?
Anyway, he returned to the track. They deemed to have gained an advantage. He actually lost a spot, so he had to do a drive-through penalty. Was at the back of the field, forced his way back up into P6, and also had some dramas as well. Had some brake dramas with the car. So if all that's sorted, he is the one to watch. That's car number 5, the one we see going through the corner there. Shane Bradford in that Hot Wheels liveried Camaro that's immediately behind him. He spun off on the first lap, returned in last and got himself up into a prominent position. He felt he should have been up with those front runners in those conditions, so watch him as well today.
So this is how the field will line up. Stephen Tomasi in the Domain Prestige Homes car. Car number 1 won the title at Island Magic at Phillip Island at the end of last year after a pretty good year. Stayed with it all year long. Massive commitment in sports sedans. These things are out and out bespoke pieces of kit. We call that car in front of Calibra. I'm not sure what part of it is, but certainly...
Roof.
Yeah, that's right, the roof. Well, the roof legally has to be for a sports sedan, and that's about it. So he's sitting on pole position. Then Simon Copping, the industry number 11 car. As you've touched on, Gary, the Perkins Engineering, running Larry's number 2. He's staying true with the number 11 that car would have had for most of its time. Then we've got Shane Woodman in the Landau Signs, the Riverside Racing BMW M3 GTR. This car out of Melbourne has... got the paddle shift gearbox in it, the first of the sports sedans in the National Series. It's a bit of an experiment, bit of a dummy go at it this weekend that he's running it. Been quite a process to get that paddle shift system working well in the BMW, but Liam and Gary down at Riverside Racing have done a lot of dyno time to get that thing working nicely for him. Then it's Miles Bond in the SR20 turbocharged Escort. Jordan Caruso in that magnificent Audi that Jack Perkins and Darren Hossack have driven before him. Tony Ricciardello, old 10 times in 6th place. It seems really strange to announce that car starting out as 6th on the grid. Shane Bradford in the Aston Air Camaro. Colin Smith in the MR Automotive. First of our Monaros out there at the moment. Then it is Anthony Cox in that Dodge-powered Saab. Michael Robinson in the number 32 Bell Real Estate. Second of our Monaros out there, and watch for that to swap a couple of times between the two Monaros. They've been doing it for a long time, these two. Line astern of each other on the grid. We go to Rick Newman, the current and reigning Victorian sports sedan champion in that car there, the New Line Homes Falcon, and of course, and unfortunately, Thomas Randall not taking any further part. And just before we went to air, that car left the property on the back of a trailer.
Yeah, there was the fastest qualifier, and unfortunately right at the end of the session came to a halt on track, and it was discovered it had done a drive shaft in the oil pump, and that wasn't fixable this weekend, and unfortunately he's had to become a spectator. The car already on its way back to Melbourne.
They've had a troubled run here, didn't they? Same last year, they were the fastest car on track, and again they went home early last year. So let's hope that Thomas and the crew from Dream Motorsport, his dad Dean, a strong racer in his own right, can get that car back to the track, the Sky Sands Black Saab, as we get set to go on race 2 for the weekend in the DEA Performance National Sports Sedan Championship. Bit of a compact field. We'd love to see the sports sedan community rally behind the next round, which will be at Queensland Raceway. Get your entries in. You've only got a couple more weeks. There's plenty of sports sedans out there. Join us at Queensland Raceway and let's fill up this grid for the DEA Performance National Sports Sedans. You'd expect Stephen Tomasi to get away nicely here. Gets up the field into turn 1. Green flag and away they go. Look at Ricciardello. He goes over to driver's left and goes right up the left-hand side of the main straight. Comes right across into the way of Stephen Tomasi and gives him a big "don't argue, son, we're going for it. I want that number 1 sticker back on the Alpha."
You had to give way at turn 1. Tomasi regathers the lead. And we get this battle behind him between Woodman and Bond, followed by Caruso, Smith, copying a bit from the others as they go flying past him.
Wow, look at the Fuds Escort just go streaming on past Shane Woodman there, the Victorian racer in the BMW. We've got the Audi right alongside there. So Europe's finest there, an Escort with a BMW and an Audi, and here come the Monaros.
Bit of everything there. These great cars fighting side by side over the back of the track now. This is 6, 7 and 8, those corners that are furthest away from the spectator points on the track. And the Escort paves the way at the moment.
Doesn't that look an absolute picture? The Fuds Escort, Miles Bond, did some racing out here a couple of weeks ago. It's got him in really good stead, but this car has got some awesome pedigree with the Motorosos at the wheel. Miles has had the car for some time, and this is just continuing the success of this chassis, isn't it?
Here comes Caruso looking for a way around Woodman down to the turn 16, over the top of the hill, down to 17 and then 18, and then Caruso goes for the outside, or the inside, sorry, which will be the outside for the next corner, gets the job done, and now we'll line up on the back of Bond in the Escort as they go up towards turn 17.
Jordan Caruso in the Audi there. It's only his second time in this car, and we know it very well from running at the front. Talk about at the front, Tomasi and Ricciardello, the big hitters in National Sports Sedans, the DEA Performance National Sports Sedan Series. These guys, when you look at the start of the season, are the ones that are going to be out in front, and they're doing it. Have a look at Jordan Caruso now. Puts the right boot into John Gourlay's Audi, drives on past that turbocharged Escort. Tony Ricciardello still not being able to get through on Stephen Tomasi. In fact, I would say it's going to be a pretty tough old job. Stephen can drive really well. You don't get the number 1 in the DEA Performance National Sports Sedans on your car without mucking around. He's just shut the door on Tony Ricciardello. Tony Ricciardello's done this before. He raced with Darren Hossack for years, door handle to door handle. This will be just Tony going, all right then, Steve, bring it on.
Yeah, there wouldn't be a lot of difference between top-end performance of these two cars, but I think Tony's might be a little bit better handler, and we're not so sure yet whether the Calibra has all its little engine gremlins out of it at this point. It seems as though it has, because it's holding on quite well at the front at the moment.
Tony Ricciardello, one of those race drivers that you could easily describe as cool as a cucumber. He gets out of the car and gets straight to work. He's got a list in his head a mile long every time he gets out of the car. This is what we need to do. That's what we've got to improve. And about an hour after he gets out of the car, you can approach him and just ask what he's up to. And if he's got other stuff to do, it's like, can he come back later? We're trying to keep this old cricket bat going.
Yeah, or he just ignores you.
Well, that too. Then you go and have a word to Les Small and he ignores you as well. Basil comes up and has a chat. Basil is Tony's dad.
Had a fall fairly recently. He's had a lot of dramas around the pelvis area, had some breakages there. He's on the mend at the moment, which is good to know. And he's here this weekend to support his son. He's been doing it for a long, long time now. This car, as we said, 10 times Tony Ricciardello has won a championship and he's looking for number 11. He won the first 3 races of round 1 and he's aiming to try and win round 2 as well. So he's made a liar out of me by just bolting past the Calibra down the straight.
Maybe those engine issues have come back.
Resurfaced, yes.
Maybe that's what it is. It's a bit of a higher revs because that is absolute out-and-out top gear grabbing where we are just going past the start. Here comes Jordan Caruso, only second time in this car, and this is where the battle is. Have a look at Shane Woodman, goes through on Miles Bond. Here comes Shane Bradford. It's not a sports sedan in the National Series without Shane Bradford in this Camaro in it.
Yeah, different spec car. This is what we call a Trans Am car, built in the very late 90s by Riley Scott in the USA to run in American Trans Am. I think it did some time over in New Zealand before it moved here. It delivers about the same performance, and as Shane predicted when he said he should have been up with these guys yesterday, he's with them today.
Certainly good to see these absolute top echelon cars in Australia, these sports sedans. We've got the best of them here this weekend. It would be fantastic to see a couple more rotaries out there on track. There's certainly plenty more V8s out there. Let's see what we can get back on track for the next round at Queensland Raceway. This is our race leader. Race second. Tony Ricciardello skated away, so he's starting to fall back into the clutches of Jordan Caruso here. Stephen Tomasi, a very, very talented race car driver. He's a no-holds-barred type of racer as well. You've got to work to get through.
Yeah, this car running the second engine. It was the engine out of the other car that they own, which was a former championship-winning Nissan 300ZX with a Chev in it. That engine's been transposed into this car, and they did break a rocker, which bent a push rod, and that's the reason why they had dramas yesterday. They just didn't have time between qualifying and the race to rectify it. There was only less than an hour's break between qualifying and the race, so they had to suffer through it. And as you can see now, the Audi pulls out and just zooms on by.
That's where Tony Ricciardello did it 1 lap ago now. There's Tony Ricciardello, the number 5. Gee, he wants to peel that off and put the number 1 straight back on that car. Very, very focused like Tomasi's were last year, so single-mindedly focused. And the Tomasis and the Ricciardellos and John Corley, it's all about preparation. And then you think you're prepared, do some more, and then do more. Prepared. It's almost like the scout motto.
Dramas for Tomasi, he's pulled it up, unfortunately. So that may bring out a safety car because it is in a fairly precarious position right there. And it could be quite interesting. Jordan Caruso, for those who don't know, comes out of XL Racing and a very strong competitor in XLs. Actually raced an XL last weekend at Whitten Raceway. So it's a big jump to go from there into one of these in 1 week.
Shane Woodman on screen now, who's done a little bit of target type racing as well. So not too sure how he's going at the moment with the paddle shift, but certainly the car was feeling good. Remember at Queensland Raceway last year, he suffered from some massive heat exhaustion. Not going to do that this weekend. The ambient temperature sort of hovering around 17 degrees here at the moment. So looking good in the number 16. Going well. Bradford looks up the inside. Done a lot of National Series racing as Shane Bradford. A very familiar scene, the Aston Air Camaro. But look at this now. This battle comes on. Difference in style of car, mid-mount BMW. Even got the newer style, let's say European GT type rear wing on this with the duckbill type mounting instead of over the top of the wing instead of underneath the wing like the more traditional sports sedan.
And exactly. And you look at the Trans Am car, which has the engine forward of the firewall, runs a 9-inch diff as opposed to a transaxle. The leading car, of course, you can move the engine back within the cabin of the car. Some tend to go back a lot, the older style cars go back a lot further than what the newer style ones. They seem to get a better balance by not bringing it as far back into the cabin as what we see in days gone by. Now Bradford looks for a move down the inside at turn 1. Not quite close enough to do it on that occasion, and Woodman manages to hold on.
Driving well, Shane Woodman. He's been a Victorian champion in this car, albeit in a very different iteration. This really has had some big development done to it over the last couple of years by the crew at Riverside Racing out of Maribyrnong in Melbourne. They do a tremendous job turning out this car, and many of the sports sedans as well. In fact, Michael Robinson's sports sedan gets a lot of work done on it, and he's actually in the 32 in 6th place at the moment, and got Colin Smith in the other Monaro behind him. Here's this BMW coming around through turn 6 as we go down to the pit lane with Emma Francesca.
I'm just down in TCR land catching up with John Martin because lots of news breaking overnight with plenty of penalties handed out, which means great news for you because you got promoted to a podium. Well done.
Yeah, thank you. A bit unexpected really. I seen the news late last night. Wally rang me and said, we'd ended up third. So it's, really good because we had some issues late in the race yesterday. Picked up some debris with about 3 laps to go when we were leading. So it's, a bit annoying to sort of like limp home and then, still ended up with a podium, so that's good. Car's got so much pace, so starting again, P3 today. I think we can do some good things in the race today.
Thanks, John. Good luck.
No worries. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Down there in pit lane, a bit of update on TCR, the DEA National Sports Sedan Series on track now. And we're being led by Tony Ricciardello, Jordan Caruso in his first year in sports sedans and outright National Sports Sedans is in second place. Looks like we're going to have a switch for third as we see Bradford draw alongside of Woodman. It's going to be the drag race. Who has got it on board? The Camaro just looks to be a little bit more slick through the air, a little bit lower, Gaz.
Yeah, it carries her air over the top of it a little bit better, and it looks like it brakes a little bit better too because he had to use all the stoppers to get himself into turn 1 there. And just looking at some of the speed to getting down the straight, and I don't think it's terminal speed, it's just a point on the track. The fastest at the moment was Caruso at 230 kilometres an hour. And I think that's somewhere just near the start-finish line.
Which is probably something we haven't seen too often. The Audi's always been a very strong race car, but out and out speed, it's not been always its absolute strong point.
Well, Michael Robinson went through in 236, same spot. So
that's good pushing the Monaro through the air, isn't it?
So
they have done some work in the front end of that car, the guys at Riverside that prepared this BMW as well. So it's good to see that he's pushing hard, and Michael Robinson currently in 6th place. So he's got Colin Smith in the 44 Monaro. As I said at the start of this race, these two Monaros like to battle it out, don't they? And as usual, that's exactly what's happening. But Bradford has got through. He now sits in P3 in this race with 6 laps completed.
Doing a good job there. At the moment, the gap between first and second, just 1.4 seconds. It's not much. And Caruso has the fastest lap of the race at 150.02. Ricciardello at 151.01, his fastest lap. So he's picked up the pace a little bit, you might say, knowing that Caruso's getting close. It's half a second now. It's getting very close.
Gee, there's a telling tale there. Caruso is exactly a second on his fastest lap, exactly 1 second faster than this guy on screen. A bit of understeer there with Tony Ricciardello through that loaded corner there as well. The Alpha just struggling a little bit for grip.
We've seen in the past with the dices with Tony Ricciardello, whether it be against Jack Perkins or Darren Hossack, that the Audi is probably a faster package, but always hasn't had the reliability of the Alpha.
I'm grinning like a Cheshire cat here at the moment, Gaz, to see these two cars going out at the front of the field again. This is like championships of old, about 5-6 years ago. Have a look at this now. Caruso is absolutely monstering the back of Tony Ricciardello. Ricciardello will have, I reckon, about 3 or 4 corners ago, grabbed the mirror, chucked it in the back and said, I don't need to see those 4 circles in my rear vision mirror again. I'm trying to get away with this in the Alpha.
You've got to remember too that the Alpha's, even though it's a little bit like the first Fleet Axe, it's had a lot of things updated in it. The technology isn't anywhere near what we would term in the Audi is probably being state of the art at the moment.
Well, yeah, you'd have to suggest that the Audi and the Saab that Thomas Randall are in are the current generation of sports sedans, whereas the Alfa, albeit that it does have the fluted guard tops, which have been a freedom over the last couple of years, it is a generation or two behind in build. I mean, it's a great build. You can't take anything away from this car. In fact, I've told Tony many times when they finish racing this car, it goes into a glass cabinet. It gets nitrogen put in there so it doesn't deteriorate, and it goes up on top of Sydney Harbour Bridge so we can all look at it.
Yeah, 2 laps to go, and the gap is 0.69, basically 3/4 of a second the gap. And as you can see on that particular lap, Tony was actually 2/10 faster, so he has picked up the pace a little bit, or maybe the tyres are starting to go away on the Audi a little bit. So say Jordan Caruso wouldn't have all that familiarity about a sports sedan that he has racing in Excels.
I would suggest at the moment...
smoke is starting to worry me a little bit coming out of the
Alpha. Let's not talk about it. Let's not look at it. Let's pretend it's not happening. But Jordan Caruso, he'll be starting to feel what a sports sedan feels like at the end of 7 laps. They start to get a little bit doughy. The temp gauges are all in alarm because they're running 750 to 780 horsepower, depending on who you talk to. And I'm going to get clobbered on the head for saying that.
Tony Ricciardello's last clock time on the straight was 250 kilometres an hour, so he has buried the right foot a little bit further down into what's left of the firewall of that Alpha.
And that's all about the run onto the straight. That is that right-hander coming onto the main straight here, about carrying the speed through there. It's not like they've got DRS where they can open a wing up and stop the drag or anything. These cars have got everything's fixed. It's just all about flowing. And in fact, Tony would be setting up the flow of the car right about here when he's coming out of turn 16 to just set the car up so that he's got that run down the straight. I'll tell you what, they are some massive front straight speeds. Michael Robinson, 244 out of the Monaro, 250 as Gary said for Tony Ricciardello in the DEA Performance National Sports Sedan Series. Across the line they go again. Tony Ricciardello leads yet another race in the main game of sports sedans. Of course, very, very strong state series in sports sedans. You can go to your local state rounds and see plenty of sports sedans racing as we begin our final journey in this race for the sports sedans around the 4.95 circuit.
Sorry, Daz, it did start the year off the Alpha with a new outright lap record above yellow, given that the track had been resurfaced. It was a great time to have a go at it. He said it was a little bit gritty, and he reckoned there was a little bit more in it. But that's a good way to start your year off, and then you go to the first round, you win all 3 races there, so you come away with a good points haulage, you might say, and then you have a drama yesterday, finished 6th, and at the moment back out in front and showing the way to the new kid on the block, you might say, Jordan Caruso in 2nd spot.
Jordan Caruso is very, very poised at the moment. He's not driving the wheels off it. Tony doesn't do a lap where he's not driving the wheels off it. He's always driving the wheels off the Alpha. But Jordan, the Alpha, it looks poised. It's sitting very, very nicely in that plume of smoke, I'm going to suggest, on that
I wonder if that's a
downshift.
brake issue they were talking about yesterday that's resurfaced in that car. It just seems to be happening towards the braking area, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's on a downshift, that's for sure. Going through on Anthony Cox now in the Saab, going slow. One of the earlier built Saabs there. Oh, have a look at that. The Alpha just getting off the back of the ripple strip there, not missing one bit of drive. And you can actually see the difference. The shorter wheelbase of the Alpha under brakes, it unloads the aero, the front air dam just about scrapes on the ground. In fact, it does scrape on the ground in certain applications. We come up to the checkered flag for the DEA Performance National Sports Sedans. And across the line, Tony Ricciardello takes another win for the 2019 season. And then it's Jordan Caruso getting to the line right along behind him. Some of the TCR guys up on the wall there just watching the end of that race as well. The big bangers, the gods of thunder, thumping their way past the pit lane. This is Bradford, Shane Bradford coming to the line as well. A fairway line astern here. In fact, it's some 30 seconds away. And Shane Woodman just in behind him there as well. So the number 68 Aston Air Camaro coming onto the straight and leading Landau Science Riverside Racing BMW through for race 2 for the weekend. And we've got a decent break. We only had an hour between qualifying and the first race yesterday. We've got a decent break till 3 o'clock for the race this afternoon, Gaz.
Get a lot of the. Hopefully we'll get Steve Tomasi, but Michael Robertson, who's come from the back of the field up to position 5 in that silver old Monaro, and not that far behind him, Cole Smith and another of the Monaros. Of course, they're not much holding about them now, but they're certainly Monaros. There's the results up on screen for you. Ricciardello, Caruso, Bradford, Woodman, Robertson, Smith, and then Rick Newman also started rear of the field, got up to position 7 in the Falcon. Then it's Copping, Cox, Bond, who's fallen down to P10, so must have had some sort of drama. Actually, Bond pulled to the pits on that last lap. Tomasi, of course, didn't finish.
Here's the start of the race again. Copping went backwards. Ricciardello dived out and was massive into turn 1. Miles Bond had these two behind him. A big dive bomb there from Jordan Caruso. Nicely judged. In fact, I won't give him dive bomb. That was a really nice, good passing manoeuvre. Set himself up. And this was setting himself up for a run to finish second in this race behind Tony Ricciardello. Here goes Tony Ricciardello, as unfortunately the Domain Prestige Homes calibre of Stephen Tomasi started to get technical problems, and this is where it all ended up. So Stephen pulled over onto the driver's right there, and the race went on around him. And what a horrible way. There is just nothing worse than sitting trackside and watching a race that you should have been leading and winning disappearing away from you. This was a good run for the line here. Tony Ricciardello's done this before. The winningest car in National Sports Sedans, that one right there. And they'll be back at 3 o'clock. Thanks, Gaz. We'll have going to go to a break, and we'll be back with, we'll have a quick chat with Jordan Cox. We'll be back very soon at the Tail and Bend.